Hello, everybody, and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Bermuda DFS Tactics show. Bit of a late start and a lot to get to, so going to try to rattle through this intro. As always, all statistics are provided by fantasynational.com. Amazing resource. Should go check it out. It's well worth the investment. Links to my social media are in the description below. That is where I'll be placing my betting card later tonight after the show. Anytime I have any interesting tidbits of information or nuggets as I'm doing my own research, I tend to share it. So go give me a follow there. And then live chat is open. I want to hear what your all's thoughts are. Who you fading? Who you using? Who do you think a pivot is? What do you think is going to play here at Port Royal? So join me in chat. Would love the interaction. Last thing, remember October 31st, this Sunday, the Mayakoba Initial Research Show. I've got the big announcement or exciting announcement and all that. You're going to want to stop by and watch that show. Some very exciting stuff, especially for you subscribers out there. For those of you that have supported me since the beginning. So, tune into that. You won't regret it. With that all said, we've got a lot to get into. So let's check our DFS tactics for the 2022 Bermuda. And we're going to transition over here to the mixed condition model that I ended up going with. And apologies if I'm a bit rushed or anything like that. I just got home about 10 to 15 minutes ago. So I did a quick look and make sure I had everything up and going that I needed. So this mixed condition model changed a slight bit from Monday's Data Dive show, although not too much, to be honest with you. As I started looking through it, I definitely changed some of the percentages, especially with the wind, the windy indicator and all that stuff. And the more I thought about it, the more I was kind of uncomfortable, really, with the lack of information that we have available at Port Royal. We have just enough to try to make some educated guesses, but not enough to, at least as a data and analytics driven person, not enough to feel a lot of confidence in. So I mean, just again, full disclosure, full transparency. You'll see it in my betting card. You'll see it tonight. I'm kind of all over the place. I've tried to stick to one narrative that I think, well, if the narrative holds true, then it's going to be a very, very, very good weekend. And if it doesn't hold, well, it's going to be absolute shit. I mean, it's going to be a total wash. So at this point, that's what I've got. And I'd be interested to hear, what your all's take on this is. If you know anything about the course or the players, because there's quite a few players that don't have any registered PGA Tour rounds. But getting into this mixed condition model, anyone who's followed me for any amount of time knows that I just value stroke gain approach. I've set it at 20%. Is that right? I don't know. Pardon me while I get my drink. With the wind, the way it's going to be, and we'll look at that here at the end of the web page view. I feel like the strokes gain approach is going to be important, but I don't know how important. I'm just using it as my default because that is what my default is. We don't have specifics on around the green numbers or off the tee or putting specific to Port Royal. So I'm just kind of, I don't want to say flying by the seat of my pants, but it's just a kind of a baseline, what I feel comfortable evaluating in a field. So I've set that at 20%, the strokes gain approach. And if anything, it's a bit on the high side. You can certainly argue to get to 15%. I wouldn't go any less than that. but again, you're talking to somebody who is biased in that statistic. The narrative that I'm going with this week is putting on these Bermuda greens. When I looked at say strokes gained total on Bermuda, and looking at trying to say proximities on Bermuda, on other courses with Bermuda, other than Port Royal and such, the disconnect there was in this putting statistic. And obviously, if a guy gets a hot putter, anybody can win. I mean, look at Cameron Champ. Hits it a mile, generally doesn't putt well, but when he does, he's going to have a high finish. With that said, though, this tournament tends to lend itself to good putters anyway. Your defending champion, Brian Gay, pretty good putter. Ryan Armour, pretty good putter. So I really focused on who the best putters on Bermuda were. And to get to the last 36 rounds, I had to actually extend it out to the past calendar year, because in the fall season, and especially in the January, February portion of the PGA Tour schedule, you're going to be playing in the South or out west, where weather's not going to be an issue. Most of those courses are Bermuda green, so I had to extend it out to the last calendar year to get to 36 rounds. And as we looked into the data dive, we saw how important par 3s and par 4s were. It was a direct correlation to high finishes on the leaderboard, and I put those at 15%. Argue one way or another whether they should go maybe down a little bit, or I don't know if I would go up any, but I felt like it was so pivotal, and we have just a general lack of overall data for Port Royal, that I felt comfortable just kind of hammering these two statistics, or these two modifiers or filters, however you want to say it. I also wanted to make sure I factored in short courses. This being a par 71, 6,800 yards, there's no denying that it's a very, very, very short course. So who are the guys that generally play those the best? Spoiler alerts, it's the guys who don't need to hit it long. And you'll see that in my rankings and who I like and such this week. But it's this course, I believe, is going to favor short game, putting particularly, irons to a lesser extent. And again, I wish we had the overall kind of numbers and whatnot. I just don't think off the tee is going to play here at all. I really don't. I don't think this course is going to get overpowered or can be overpowered. Because I think this is going to be a short game type tournament, instead of going with something like scrambling or sand saves, I just went a full around the green. Scrambling is something that we can measure at Port Royal, and it is generally higher here than at the average tour event, but not by much. And I don't think this is going to play either easy nor difficult. So I didn't want to put in anything like, birdies are better on easy, or, birdies on difficult, bogeys on, avoiding bogeys and such. So I just went with a straight around the green instead of scrambling, because scrambling infers that you're trying to scramble for pars and such. I just went with around the green. The last three metrics here, because it is supposed to be windy, I looked at who plays just total, strokes gained total in the wind. I looked at who hits their approaches the best in the wind. Is this right? Maybe not. But again, I'm such a strokes gained approach biased evaluator that I went with that as 5%. And then lastly, still strokes gained par 5, and you still have to have a little bit of scoring on par 5s. But really, you don't have to have a lot here, and that's why it's only at 5% as opposed to, say, 10 or 15 like it has been in these previous courses lately. So, with that, my final rankings were Seamus Power first, and you'll notice that a lot of that is in the par fours. Since it's a par 71, you have more par fours and one less par three. So, strokes gained par four, number one. He's very good in the wind. I mean, very, very good in the wind, total and approaches. He still gets his, still can score on the par fives. He's good around the green. I mean, really, his worst statistic is putting, and he's not awful at it. So that made a lot of sense to me. The guy that I've kind of targeted the whole week, from the moment that I knew he was in the field, the course type, all that, was Christian Zanehoot. I talked about him a lot in the data dive and the initial research. So if you need, in-depth analysis on him, make sure you check out those shows. He's second in my rankings. No real surprise here. The only problem with Seabez, he can get a little wayward with his irons, especially in the wind. But I still think this is a course that's going to suit him well. I would not be surprised at all if he wins. In fact, he would be my pick to win, even though he is not the betting favorite. Rounding out the top five here, we got Guido Migliozzi, Mark Hubbard, and Hank Lebioda. And then the rest of the top 10, Bo Hogue, somebody I really like this week, Hayden Buckley, Vaughn Taylor, Camilo Villegas, and Adam Hadwin. Patrick Reed is lurking here outside the top. He's 12th. Mito down here at 15th. So a pretty top-heavy expected rankings, really. There's certainly some values that we'll be able to extract and such, but I'm going to be honest, as I was working on my DFS lineups today, this is going to be a tough week. It really is, because, there's not a lot of high-end talent at this field. So people are just gravitating towards the best names, and there's not a lot of value to be had. So understand that when you're going into your contest, that you're probably going to have to accept a lot of 3v3s, 4v4s, if you're unlucky, 2v2s. That's just the way I see it playing out. And when we go to the Excel spreadsheet, you'll notice that I just don't know how you build a balanced lineup that is going to win a lot. Now, a balanced lineup would be okay, I would say, in like a double up, or in those, smaller guaranteed type things. If you're looking for a big tournament, I just don't know how balance is going to work. There are so many, it's just too popular. The players that you would use in a balanced lineup are just too popular. So we'll get into that. Let's sort this by salary and kind of go through a quick run through here. Bring up the expected or projected ownerships. In the 10Ks, there is really one pivot, I would say, and there are I think 3 most owned players up here, and then a middling. So your pivot is actually Patrick Reed. He is sitting at 11.5% as of 10:25 or so p.m. according to Fantasy National. He's actually the biggest pivot in this area, and I like that. I like Patrick Reed being a pivot. I'm going to use a lot of Patrick Reed, I think, this week. Now, he struggles on his par threes. It says he doesn't do well on his par fives. But again, because I think this is going to be a short game type tournament, putting around the green, very good at par fours, very good on short courses. I think this is going to set up fairly well for Patrick Reed. He might not win the tournament, but if you're giving me 11.5% on Patrick Reed, whereas the most commonly played player in this event is Mito Pereira at 21, almost 22%. So you're giving me half the ownership on Patrick Reed than you are Mito Pereira. And don't get me wrong, this course sets up very well for Mito as well. But Patrick Reed is your leverage here in the 10Ks. He's your absolute leverage right now. Sitting at 11.5%. Fitzpatrick's at 16%, and then like Seabez 18, Mito 22, Seamus Power 19.5. I mean, I'm going to use Seamus Power. He's number one in my rankings, but I mean, being that high, I can certainly have reasons to either move up to Reed, move down, so on and so forth. But yeah, I like Patrick Reed, and the fact that he's half the ownership of Mito Pereira, sure, give me Patrick Reed. Moving to the 9Ks, you got Hayden Buckley, Schwab, Chad Ramey, Hadwin, Willett, Taylor Pendrith, and Patrick Rogers. There are a couple of very common plays. I don't want to say they're chalky, but common plays. And then the rest of these are pretty darn pivot. Hadwin's your most owned in the 9Ks at 15, almost 15.5%. You've got Buckley at 13%, which is a shame because I really like Hayden Buckley this week too. I don't know if 13% scares me off a lot. It'll certainly temper the amount of ownership I have on him, but if he was up where in the 15, 16%, absolutely. But at 13, I might take the chance and hope that I set myself up decent for 5v5s if he indeed is more popular than the 13%. You also have Chad Ramey at 13.1%. I mean, he's a very good strokes gain approach player, but struggles on the par threes, not very good around the green. I can kind of leave Chad Ramey alone, to be honest with you. Hadwin does kind of hurt because if this is a short game type tournament, I mean, Adam Hadwin's one of the best putters going, so that hurts. I was really hoping that Adam Hadwin would not be used, and that's quite the opposite. Everybody else in here is a pivot. I mean, Schwab is at a little less than 4%. Willett, somebody I don't mind. He's a 10.5. Rogers, I really like this week. He's at 9%. I like Rogers a lot, especially we talked about the putting. Very good at par fours. His problem has always been his irons, especially in the wind. He's not a very good wind player. So if he can survive the round that has the wind, make the cut, I think he's in pretty good shape. I like Patrick Rogers a lot this week. Moving to the 8Ks, and again, I apologize. I'm still recovering from the weekend and the nasal crap that I had. Moving to the 8Ks, Thomas Detry, Sahith Tigala, Migliozzi, Stallings, McCarthy, Yeager, Higo, Bramlett, Armour, and Lipsky. There is, let's see, three very popular plays, and then everybody else legitimately is a less than 10% owned pivot. The three popular, Guido Migliozzi, 15%. I understand he's third in my data model. This is going to set up well for Guido, I think. If he's at 15%, I'll try to temper the ownership. McCarthy's at 13.5%, and while he's a player that I like, I think is going to set up well for him, I'm going to cut my ownership to basically 0 in DFS because I've got an outright bet on him. So that takes care of my exposure to Denny McCarthy. If you're using Denny McCarthy, I don't blame you one bit. Again, I'm going with the narrative that's going to be a short game event, so putting around the green, strokes gain total on these short courses. But you see, he struggles on a lot of the other statistics I think we factored in. So if this isn't a short game contest, Denny McCarthy's not going to do well at all. Just understand that my exposure to Denny McCarthy is baked into the outright bet. And seeing that he is, one of the 3 most popular owned players in the 8Ks, I'll just avoid him. I'll just avoid him. And then lastly is Ryan Armour. Makes a whole lot of sense. He is, in the 2 times that this tournament's played, he's tied for 8th. He just loves this course. He's at 15%. I'm still going to use Ryan Armour a little bit. Just because it's an obvious play doesn't make it a bad play. And you hope that he's not as popular as it is, but again, kind of like the Mito Pereira thing, you take him, it's completely fine. Just understand that you're baking in your 5v5 already. And if you go Mito Pereira and Ryan Armour, then you're setting yourself up for basically a 4v4 against 30-40% of the field. So I don't have a problem with Armour. I'm definitely going to use him. I just have to find my pivot elsewhere if I do use Armour. Somebody I kind of want to highlight in this area in the 8Ks is Stefan Yeager. I like Yeager quite a bit this week, and he is sitting only at 5.6%. He's somebody that, coming off the Corn Ferry Tour, now Bermuda is his worst surface putting, I'll give you that, but it's not like it's a complete failure. He has been putting much better lately. The Sanderson Farms was Bermuda. He gained 3.5. He's not generally that bad off the tee. He's pretty bad, but again, this is a tournament that I don't think off the tee is going to matter a whole lot. Sanderson Farms, I also believe, had Zoysia Ruff. Played, it was chipping well there. If his irons come to play and he's not an abject failure on the greens, this is going to be a big week for Stefan Yeager. So this is my pivot in the 8Ks. I'm going to use quite a bit of Stefan Yeager. So I wanted to highlight him. I understand there's a lot of reasons for concern. He's not good in the wind. He is not good at all. So you've got reasons to avoid him. Again, I'm going with the fact that off the tee probably isn't going to play too much. I am banking on the irons being a little bit better than, say the top third of the field. That's the chance I'm going to take this week. Otherwise, Tagala is okay, but his biggest thing is off the tee. And again, I just don't think it's going to play too well this week. That's the quick look at the 8Ks. Let's move to the high sevens. Hardy, Hubbard, Watney, Peter Uline, Lucas Herbert, Russell Knox, Dylan Fratelli, Alex Smalley, Kiradek, Epi Barnott, Austin Eckroat, and Hank Lebiota. There are 3 highly, one's a complete chalk play in here, and 2 others are close to it. The complete chalk play is Russell Knox at 7,700, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, he doesn't putt Bermuda very well, at least in his last 36 rounds. Again, don't make this seem like he is a complete abject failure on Bermuda. He's only losing 0.2, whereas the others are a tenth and a tenth and a half. But I want you to notice he is very good in the wind. He's very good regardless of the circumstance. Easy, difficult, whatever. His game's always been about approach. And if the putting is there, he'll have a very high finish. And again, it's an if, but Sanderson Farms, Bermuda, gain strokes. Strokes gain around the green. Yep. Strokes gain approach. There. I understand why Russell Knox is such a popular play. He is a complete fade for me, only because of the amount of ownership. He's a good play. But if I'm going to take an obvious good play, I'm going to take it in Ryan Armour. Where do you go? He's at 81. There he is. I'm going to take it in Ryan Armour because it's less ownership. Now, if this was reversed and Armour was sitting at 17% and Knox was, whatever, what's Armour at? A little under 15, then I would use Knox. This is all about ownership. It's not about the player. It's about ownership. This is where I am trying to gain my leverage if I'm going to choose a chalky play. So Russell Knox, just for me, is a complete, absolute fade just because of the ownership. And if you're okay using Russell Knox, then you got the same situation as Mito Pereira, as Ryan Armour, to a lesser extent, like, Seamus Power and Zanehoot, like, just accepting that this is a 5v5 lineup. And that's okay. If Russell Knox goes out and, either wins the tournament or top fives or something, then, my DFS lineups are going to be pretty bad. It's going to be hard for me to win a lot of money this week if Russell Knox plays well. That's just the choice that I'm making. That's the risk I'm taking. Elsewhere in the high sevens, Nick Hardy is getting a lot of love. He's at 16.5%. Mark Hubbard is at 15.5%. Again, I clearly see why. Highly ranked in my data models. Hubbard, best in the field in par threes, second best in par fives. That's a pretty good combination. Nick Hardy, really good at the par fours, very good at short courses. Both of them have very good strokes gain approach. I'll have my sprinkle of exposure to them. I certainly will. But they are very popular. The one person I want to highlight for you all, and Lebiota. Lebiota's at 13.5%, so a little less popular than these two, and that makes me happy because I'm a big Hank Lebiota fan. His approach has always been good. He's good at par fours. And the one person I want to highlight for you all is Alex Smalley. And Alex Smalley right now is sitting at 9%. And, he doesn't have overwhelmingly, strong statistics here. I mean, yes, he plays these short courses pretty darn well. Plays par fours okay. He's okay around the green. I want you to notice that he doesn't have a bad statistic either. He's pretty darn solid. He's coming off the Korn Ferry Tour. He's never putt POA, at least measured rounds. He was positive on Bermuda, and even with all the the bad bit performances, he's still okay putting, just a little bit under average. He's good around the green. Now, the one thing that does worry me is that off the tee, it tends to be one of his stronger suits, and I don't think it's going to play here. But again, the Shriners, not the Shriners, Sanderson Farms, Bermuda greens, he didn't perform the best. Zoysia Rough was good. Strokes gain approach was good. Just keep an open mind to Alex Smalley, especially if you're trying to avoid the Hank Lebiota, semi chalk. I mean, this is a pivot straight to at the same price point. Lebiota 75.5. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Alex Smalley's at 7,600, so it's 100 more. Now he's never played a measured round in the wind, so complete wild card there. But even if it's not considered windy, it's going to be moderate, and clearly has played well in that condition. So I think this is going to be a pretty good coming out for Alex Smalley. I really do. So keep him in mind. That's the person I want to highlight in the high 7Ks. Let's move to the low 7Ks. Malnati, Sig, Nick Taylor, Brandon Hagee, Aaron Wright, Matthew Neesmith, Lee Hodges, Graham McDowell, Straka, Duffner, Harry Hall, Brian Gay, Anirban Lahiri, Davis Riley, David Hearn, Brian Stewart. Good Lord, there's a lot of them. Whaley, Ludwig Aberg, Bo Hostler, Kramer Hickok, and Bo Hoke. Oh, that was a lot. All right. The low sevens. Make sure you all can see that here. Yep. Okay. Sorry, again, just making sure that you all can You all can see that. In the low sevens, you've got Jason Duffner is at 14.5%. I understand, approach, good at par threes. That kind of worries me about Duffner. I have him starred because I generally star, the top 25%, 30% of my rankings. But seeing him at 14.5%, I can fade him. There's enough around here that I like. Neesmith's at 13%. Nah, no thanks. I mean, as much as I'm an iron player, he just doesn't do anything else well enough for me to consider. Again, you see, strokes and approach, great, but he never puts it together. And until he does, I mean, you just got to prove it to me. Let's see, Neesmith, Brian Stewart, 13%, Bo Hogue, 14%, and Kramer Hickok, 11%. I was going to highlight Bo Hogue, but, the ownership does it for me. I think this is going to be a very good week for Bo Hogue. Very good iron player. He's not the best around the green. His putting is okay. But he scores on par threes and par fours. And he's very good on short courses. So I like Bo Hogue a lot this week. Apparently a lot of people do. I'm still going to have Bo Hogue. He fits, and at the very bottom of the 7Ks, he fits in a very nice part of the price board where you can work different types of lineups through. So I like Bo Hogue. I'm not so high on Kramer Hickok. He's getting a lot of love. 11%. Meh. Stewart's great. I mean, I'd play Stewart, but sitting at 13%, I'll temper the amount of ownership. Somebody I kind of want to highlight for you all is David Hearn. Again, pretty darn good in the wind. He's a good iron player as it is. Very good putter on Bermuda. Now, the par threes and the par fours kind of scare you. But with David Hearn, if this indeed does become windy, he likes it. The more windy it is, he likes it. While I don't know if this is going to play difficult, I don't think it's going to play easy either. So if this becomes truly, truly difficult, I'm hoping that the wind outplays the difficulty, because he generally has not played difficult courses well. But again, he has traditionally been a fairly good putter. It hasn't been there lately. He hasn't played since the Fortinet, so could be taken a couple of different ways. Maybe he's found something, or maybe something's wrong. And I do not think. Again, apologies. I needed still recovering off that weekend nasal crap. I think the putter is better than what it has been lately. And the moments that he, not even spikes, just shows up and does okay with the putter, he's generally okay. And again, his weakness has always been off the tee. I don't think that's going to be so much an issue here this week. I just don't. Always been a good iron player. So, again, another guy just to kind of keep in mind. I'm not saying to throw him in 85% of your lineups. Just if you're around this price point, you want to try to avoid the Brian Stewart chalk or the Bo Hogue chalk. Take a look at David Hearn. He's at just under 9%. Other guys here. I'm surprised Brian Gay isn't getting more love. He's the defending champ. He's played very well here. Now he's in terrible form. Maybe that's scaring people off. I've got my exposure with Brian Gay on an outright bet, so I won't use him. But I'm just surprised by it. Harry Hall is somebody else I've considered this week. Let's move quickly to the 6Ks, and then we'll move on to the spreadsheet portion. I'm gonna be honest with you, the 6Ks, I didn't see a lot that I liked. Like last week, I was really on Kyle Stanley. That I don't want to say it blew up in my face, but it certainly didn't work out the best for me. I generally try to pride myself in finding these 6K value guys. I don't see much here this week. I really don't. I think this is the kind of week that you're just going to have to roll some dice. You're going to have to pick somebody in the 6K range, and if he plays well, great. You're going to gain a lot of leverage because none of these guys are really all that popular. There's literally one guy that is semi-chalk, and it's Vaughn Taylor, which, again, I completely understand why. I'm going to use Vaughn Taylor. I think this sets up very well for Vaughn Taylor. Very good putter. Good on Bermuda. The windier it is, the better. His putter has been out of form, but you see here he's traditionally been a good putter. His iron play, usually pretty darn solid. Good short game. Again, his weakness is off the tee. And that's the narrative I'm going with. That off the tee just won't matter this week, or it means very little. So if that narrative, comes true, I'm going to be sitting in a decent spot. But if off the tee does matter, fucked. That's the dice roll I was going with this week. So I do like Vaughn Taylor quite a bit, and yes, he is chalky for this area of the price board. But sometimes an obvious play is still a good one. Somebody at the same price point is Camilo Villegas. I really like too. He is sitting at 8.5% or so. Very good putter. Very, very good on these short courses. You are concerned about the par threes, but if his irons are realistically playing as well as they can, and again you come down here, like his irons have not been good lately at all, but he has shown the ability to get hot. I mean, some people show the ability to get real hot with the putter. He's been generally fairly, like tour average or so. He can get smoldering with the irons at points. Shoot, even last year at the Sanderson Farms, 7 strokes. Now, he didn't make a putt, which is a little bit worrisome, but he's generally a better putter than that. A lot better putter than that. Iron play is very, very... He can get smoldering hot with the irons, and that's why I like him this week. Especially if the putter stays, somewhat hot as well. So I like Villegas quite a bit this week. Somebody else that I've kind of gravitated towards is Luke Donald, and that surprises me. But when you take a look deeper, you can't argue. Number 1 in this field in strokes gained approach. Pretty darn good at the par 3s and the par 4s. Pretty darn good in the wind, which you would expect him being an Englishman. Somebody that I'm excuse me, I'm surprised that I'm gravitating towards him, but now it's starting to make sense as I dug into the stats. And again, the narrative I'm going with, off the tee, is his worst part of his game. Just don't think it's going to matter here, given that everything else stays somewhat consistent. So, yeah, I like Luke Donald this week, which is surprising. At least surprising for me. Now, if you're coming down here at the very, very bottom of the price board, I know I've got a few guys starred. Again, that's only really because they made it in the top 25 to 30%. I'm not going to advocate using Jonathan Bird or David Lingmerth. Where I have been comfortable bottoming out has been Dylan Wu. And I understand that, I see Jim Nose here is, technically rated higher than Dylan Wu. And I'm going to show you Dylan Wu. And he's got some Korn Ferry Tour stats that are in the spreadsheet as well. He's only been measured in calm winds. And Bermuda, it looks like Bermuda's been bad. It's not even 5/100ths of a stroke. So it's not like he's been terrible at Bermuda. He's basically just under tour average. Difficult, really good. Easy's okay. Easy okay. So I think he'll be able to handle, whether the course is difficult or not. The irons all of that came in the Fortinet earlier this year, or earlier in the tour season. You see, I mean, he was 31st this past year at the U.S. Open. That's not a fluke. That's not a fluke. Now, the Sanderson Farms was not good around the green, not good putting. But I'll show you in the spreadsheet why I think there's some hidden statistics here, especially from the Korn Ferry Tour. I really like Dylan Wu this week. That's where I've been bottoming out. I shouldn't say I really like him. I've been comfortable bottoming out at Dylan Wu. So that is a quick look through the price board. Again, like I said, quick take. A few of the projected ownerships. Let's take a look at the wind forecast, the weather forecast, very quickly here for Port Royal Golf Club. Tomorrow still looks like a wind haven, wind fest. I mean, teeing off early in the morning, you've got 30-mile-an-hour sustained winds. Looks like there is some possibility for some rain, but you still have strong winds and gusts. If that rain does, in fact, come through, that's a big advantage for the afternoon. It's a big advantage for the afternoon. And you would give that advantage to the afternoon already due to the just lesser amount of wind. You come to Friday, and while it certainly looks windy early, you got to remember these guys are teeing off around this time. So they're dealing with the same amount of wind, and that course is going to be still fairly soft if this rain comes through. And the course generally firms up faster in the or firms up pretty good in the afternoon. So you got rain coming in here, still a soft course, and you got heavy wind here. I'm going to give this a decent little PM AM split favor. Decent favor. And again, I apologize if I had a bit more time, I would have had the tee times up here, but that is something you certainly can go look and check out real quick. I'd give it a decent PM, so Thursday PM, Friday AM favor for tee times. If I'm, let's say, making 20 lineups, I might do 3, 4, 5 with that a pretty decent factor. And Saturday looks really nice. Rain coming in, and then Sunday looks like a wash, but who's to say? What we're mainly concerned about is getting our 6 of 6 through. So, again, Thursday PM, Friday AM. That is what I'm seeing. All right, I'm going to exit out of that. Let's switch over to the Microsoft Excel portion. Bring that up. Now, this is sorted by salary, so we can start making some lineups here after a little bit. But I wanted to show you Dylan Wu as I lose my voice. Dylan Wu. We mentioned how there were some hidden statistics. Well, I went ahead, even though I didn't factor it into the final rankings, I did look at some scrambling throughout the week. Dylan Wu's very good at that. The length of the par threes that probably is going to be the biggest factor of the par threes. Well, he's pretty darn good at those. The length of the par fours, that was a very strong correlation to the top of the leaderboard. Well, look at that. He's pretty darn good at those too. And then, again, understand what these are telling you as I scroll over to let you all see. These are Korn Ferry Tour stats only. So these are comparing the Korn Ferry Tour guys. He is not the best in strokes gained total Bermuda, but again, it's backing up this data from, where did he go? There he is. backing up this data from over here, where par 4s, par 3s, pretty darn good. He was great at par 4s and the par 4s of the length here that is most prevalent at Port Royal. So I think Dylan Wu is going to be a pretty good play, and him being as less owned as he is, I mean, he's 4%. I think that's going to be the one value play that I'm going to suggest in the 6Ks, because I'm not very confident about a whole lot of them. That is one that I'll call it the mini Kyle Stanley this week, because I was all over Kyle Stanley. I thought he was going to be a very good value. I'll call it the mini Kyle Stanley value. Let's roll through the tiers contests real quick. Sorry, I'm making sure chat's still up. Let's roll through the tiers contest real quick. For those who played that format. So tier 1, you got Matthew Fitzpatrick, Christian Zanehoot, and Patrick Reed. The fade for me is Matthew Fitzpatrick. I would take, it's hard for me to say, because to me, Christian Zanehoot's the favorite to win the tournament. I'm okay with either of these. Zanehoot's the more chalky one. Reed's the pivot in that area, I think. I'm okay with either one of these. Just whatever strategy you're going with, wherever you're deciding to take your chalk. If you choose to take it here, that's fine. Find your unique elsewhere. Whereas if you take Patrick Reed, you can probably afford to take some chalk in a different tier. Either one of these two, I'd be happy with. Tier 2, Mito Pereira, Taylor Pendrith, Patrick Rogers, Sahith Theegala, Garrick Higo. Well, Higo is out for me. Theegala's out for me. Pendrith's out for me. Pereira is probably the better play, but he's so darn chalky. I'm going to go with Patrick Rogers. I like Patrick Rogers this week. I like him enough to where I think his uniqueness is going to not overshadow, but be more valuable than the probability that Mito finishes higher, if that makes sense. Tier 3, Seamus Power, Hayden Buckley, Matthias Schwab, Chad Ramey, David Lipsky, and I think that's it. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's Seamus Power, even if he's chalky. I don't mind Hayden Buckley, but I think it's pretty clearly for me between these two. Tier 4, Adam Hadwin, Danny Willett, Scott Stallings, Denny McCarthy, Stefan Yeager, Nick Hardy, and Alex Smalley. Hadwin's the chalky play, and I like Hadwin. I do. I would probably go Yeager. Assuming that the ownerships play out roughly in the tiers contest the same way that they do in the classic build your own lineup format, which again I don't know how that works. I've only had very little exposure to tiers. It's just not my thing. Hadwin's a good play. I would go Yeager for the uniqueness. Tier 5, Detry, Migliozzi, Bramlett, Hubbard, Uline, Fratelli, Harry Hall. I actually like Harry Hall quite a bit this week, but you've got Migliozzi, who's third in my rankings, and somebody else I really like is Mark Hubbard. So I would go Migliozzi. Don't overlook Harry Hall. I do like Harry Hall this week. Finally, Tier 6, Ryan Armour, Nick Watney, Russell Knox, Lucas Herbert, Hank Lebioda, Aaron Rye, Jason Duffner. You've got a lot of chalk here, at least when you're building your classic lineup. Ryan Armour, just a good play. Russell Knox, just a good play. Lebioda, less chalky than those two. Probably a little bit lesser, or a little bit more of a risk, I'll say. And Jason Duffner is pretty darn chalky as well. To me, because this whole tier is entirely chalky, pick the one that you feel most comfortable with on the upside. For me, I think it'd be Ryan Armour, only because he's shown it here. He's tied for 8th. Can't argue that. I won't argue against Russell Knox. I won't argue against Hank Lebioda. I think Duffner's a pretty clear 4th among those 4. Quite clearly, I'm out on Aaron Rye. I'm out on Nick Watney. I'm out on Lucas Herbert. So choose the one you're most comfortable with on the upside. But I do think Duffner is a pretty clear fourth of those four. So that's the tiers contest. Let's start building some lineups here. See if we can't figure out what maybe what a chalky lineup looks like, and see if we can beat it. Like I said, I don't see how people are going to be able to build a balanced lineup and be competitive for high, like the high end finishes that get you more money. But I can certainly build you a lineup that's balanced and is going to be pretty popular. Quite clearly, people are probably starting with Mito. Let's say Mito, and then probably if they don't use Adam Hadwin, they're definitely going to Guido. Then maybe Ryan Armour, Russell Knox, absolutely. Let's see, 7,500 per. Maybe like a Hank Leviota. That's still another 75. Let's scroll down here, see who else might be chalky in this. Yeah, let's do Bo Hogue. So if people are going, say, bouncing out at Bo Hogue, you've got 8,000. That's David Lipsky. He's not too terribly popular. Nick Hardy, Mark Hubbard. Like here's a lineup that's leaving 100 on the table, but I mean, you can see here, 16.5 projected ownership. No, thank you. That's just way, way too chalky for me. Let's see. If you try to do stars and scrubs, somewhat chalky stars and scrubs, maybe they're starting at Zanehoot. Oh, gosh dang it, I knew I'd do that. Christian Zanehoot. There we go. If they go as high as Zanehoot, maybe they come down to. I'm just trying to use different people here. Maybe Denny McCarthy. Yeah, McCarthy here. Gosh, dang it. McCarthy, Knox. Maybe they use some Matthew Neesmith. Let's see who's the real chalky play down here. Maybe Von Taylor. Maybe they bottoming out at Von Taylor. Gives you 83.50 per. Wow. I mean, I would have to imagine they're using Ryan Armour. And 86. That's Scott Stallings. Yeah. Maybe they find 100 somewhere and go Guido, Migliozzi. Maybe they're even going like full stars and scrubs. They're doing like Von Taylor, Bo Hogue. They're going to say maybe Zanehoot, Adam Hadwin, probably Russell Knox. Leaves them 8,400. Yeager, who's not popular. McCarthy, maybe. Something like that. That might be a stars and scrubsy type of lineup. Let me show you what I've been kind of gravitating towards. I've been obviously I've been showing you that I was all over Patrick Reed. I've actually been trying to find ways to make him the second highest in my lineup and kind of mix and matching say Zanehoot. Powers technically would go here. Power would technically go here, and Reed would go there. But I'm trying to fit either Zanehoot, Power. I've tried to avoid Mito some, but if I'm going Patrick Reed, which is a pivot, I've been okay playing around with Mito. But let me use Zanehoot. I told you I've been comfortable going Dylan Wu. So that gives me like 7,500 per on these three people. Depending on the rest of the lineup that I've been trying to, either I'm trying to maybe go a bit more Starsy and Scrubsy, so maybe I come up for Patrick Rogers. I really like him this week, which then forces me all the way down here into the 6,700, like Camilo Villegas. And then I would have 66 left. That would be, who am I at 66? Like O'Hare, Seifert, somewhere around here. I could use Jim Nose, 265s, leave 100 on the table. That's a real, I've been going to extremes this week, just trying to find some uniqueness. You see here at 8.5%, I still need to fill one in, but it's better than the 13% that I've been kind of seeing. If I were to go a bit more balanced, maybe I start with Hayden Buckley. Wow, I apologize. I just now, I hear how nasally I am. Maybe I go Hayden Buckley, and I bought him out. I don't mind Davey Vanderwalt this week, but let's bottom out at Brian Stewart. I know he's a bit chalky, but let's bottom out at Brian Stewart. And again, this is kind of the ultra balanced lineup. If I started at Buckley, I've used Rogers a couple of times, but I've been kind of gravitating towards Patrick Rogers. I really like Yeager this week. I mentioned Alex Smalley. That gives me 8,000. I'm not particularly fond of David Lipsky, but it gives me a chance to eat a bit of chalk here, whether I like Nick Hardy or Russell Knox. It's still at 11%. That's the point that I've been trying to make this whole time is, even when you're trying to, you think you're finding some uniqueness, it's still quite popular. You really have to find legitimately every single bit of uniqueness you can. Patrick Reed. I'm not going to advocate for you to use Matthias Schwab, but if you really want to get unique, there you go. But Patrick Reed, Patrick Rogers, you can see here 11.5 doesn't sound pivoty, but compared to everybody else on the price board where he is, it's a pivot. Patrick Rogers, Stefan Yeager. These are the kind of lineups that I'm having to build, and just it is what it is. If I'm trying to be ultra unique, this is what you kind of have to do. I've been using Villegas quite a bit just to get away from Von Taylor. I like Von Taylor a lot. I'll have some Von Taylor, but if I'm trying to just build an ultra unique lineup, I get 7,700 per still. You got, what's this? Maybe Leviota, Mark Hubbard, or you're still going to have to pick some chalk somewhere here. If you think Ryan Armour's just a good play, it gives you 73. You're looking at Aaron Rye, Brandon Hagee, Matthew Neesmith. If you say you come down from Ryan Armour, you go, I'll use Mark Hubbard because he's fourth in my rankings. We'll say Mark Hubbard. Yes, he's at 15.5%, but you go Mark Hubbard and Hank Leviota, you're a little bit under 11%. You can still find some more uniqueness here. Maybe you come down off Hubbard and you go Alex Smalley that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Now you're down under 10%. So this is one of the weeks that you're going to have to just take some gambles, roll some dice, take a long shot. And that lineup, if that long shot plays, if he makes the cut, you're going to be looking really, really good. I'm not going to say you're going to win your contest, but you're going to be looking really good if you pick the right long shot or unique guy. And it's going to be somebody probably in the 6Ks. So, guys, I think that's going to do it for the DFS Tactics show. Remember, tune in Sunday night, October 31st. It's exciting. I'm excited to share with you all what I've got going on. Hopefully I'll be over the nasally crap by then. You won't want to miss it, especially you subscribers. I've got a lot of great stuff coming up for you all. So with that, for any bets that you have made this week at the Bermuda, for all your contests in DFS at the Bermuda, and until I see you Sunday night, may all your bets be profitable.